What are my obligations as an e-commerce business when it comes to VAT and corporate tax in the UAE? I'm Richard from Safari Star, and in this video, we will be looking at VAT and corporate tax in the UAE and what your obligations are as an Amazon seller or a non-resident online seller or online business operating in the UAE. I often get asked this question when it comes to non-resident businesses expanding their services into UAE. Do I need to register for VAT? And what about corporate tax? Because UAE now has also corporate tax. When it comes to VAT, it's very, very simple. If you are an e-commerce seller conducting business through one of the many platforms in the UAE, such as Amazon or Noon, and the place of supply is UAE, then you will most likely need to register for VAT. The standard VAT rate in UAE is 5%, and the VAT filing is done on a quarterly basis. However, when it comes to registration and compliance, there are some rules and regulations to keep in mind, such as VAT registration threshold. For entities established in UAE, there is a 375 dirham registration threshold. Therefore, unless your taxable sales exceed this registration threshold, there is no need, it's not necessary to register. There is also an option to register for VAT voluntarily if you really want to. Once your taxable sales exceed 187,500 dirham, you can register voluntarily. So you might want to do this in case you want to claim back some business expenses, for example. Sorry, claim back the VAT on business expenses, not the expenses themselves. You want to claim back some business expenses, for example. Having said that, these rules only apply to local companies. Therefore, as a non-resident entity, you must still register for VAT within 30 days of your first taxable sale in UAE. So what about corporate tax then in the UAE? And this is where it becomes a little bit more complicated and not so clear in some areas. Corporate tax, or CT, was recently introduced in UAE. According to the new rules, all UAE companies, including mainland and free zone entities, must now register, as well as non-resident companies that have permanent establishment in the UAE and have state-sourced income. The tax rate is 0% on all taxable income up to 375,000 dirham and 9% on taxable income above this threshold. So it's still very, very low rates. It's 0 if you don't reach the threshold and 9% if you do on whatever you've gone over the threshold. So again, it's really, really low numbers comparing to other countries. For example, UK, 20% plus, depending on how much you're making. So there are some exemptions available for smaller businesses that you can apply for, but you still must register and declare. So you might have to pay 0%, but registration and declaration is still mandatory for all UAE businesses, or as I said, foreign businesses with permanent establishment. So far, again, it looks pretty clear. If you are a local company, you must register for corporate tax, and then the amounts that you pay or the percentages that you have to pay depend on how much you're making or depend on whether you are registered as a small business or have an exemption, etc. And all non-resident, all foreign companies with permanent establishment, and again, this is the key thing here. If you have a permanent establishment such as an office or a warehouse in the UAE, you are considered a non-resident with permanent establishment, and therefore you must register for corporate tax. If you have state-sourced income in the UAE, you must also register for corporate tax. So key points here. What is state-sourced income? Income occurring in or derived from the UAE. So therefore, if you are an Amazon seller and you are selling using the FBA fulfillment, then you are technically having state-sourced income. Permanent establishment, as I mentioned, a fixed place of business or other form of presence in the UAE. These are the two key things that you have to consider. Yeah, if you have an office or if you are deriving state-sourced income, then you have to register for corporate tax. So what does this all mean for non-resident e-commerce businesses trading through platforms like Amazon and using third-party fulfillment solutions like FBA? Do they need to register for corporate tax as well in the UAE? Because technically they have some sort of physical presence in UAE and they're deriving state-sourced income. So that's the big question, and that's where it gets a little bit confusing. So If you use the same example as we used for VAT, let's say we have a non-resident company, let's say German company selling in the UAE. Technically, as a non-resident Amazon seller, you do not have a warehouse or an office or employees in UAE and are purely conducting business remotely from your home country using Amazon FBA model, then you don't have permanent establishment. So we can cross that off. So under this condition, corporate tax registration is not required. However, since you are using Amazon FBA program for fulfillment in the UAE, you are deriving state source income. So from that perspective, you should register for corporate tax. Having dug a little bit further into this, based on the information that we found on the FDA website, if a non-resident entity with no permanent establishment in the UAE is deriving state source income, registration for corporate tax is not required. So in conclusion, if you are a non-resident e-commerce business, such as an Amazon seller, using UAE-based fulfillment program, FBA, and derive state source income in the UAE, then you may not be required to register for corporate tax in the UAE. Having said that, it's not uncommon for UAE corporate tax regulations to change, and therefore you should really keep a lookout for any changes announced on the FDA website. If you're not sure if your business is considered as having permanent establishment or state source income or nexus in the UAE, you should really consult a tax advisor at this point. You can read more about UAE VAT and corporate tax on the official FDA website, and you should really check this source for any official information, to say, or you can also read our Safari Stamp. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you found the information useful. If you did, please don't forget to like, follow and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you all next time. Take care, thank you, and goodbye.